You ready back there, John? Welcome, everyone, to the January 6, 2015 Shakopee City Council meeting, first meeting of the year. Happy New Year, all. Ms. Beckman, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel.
Here.
Councilmember Luce.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Mayor Tapke.
Here. All stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, staff would add resolution number 7539, which was on your table, and we would like to do that as item 3A.
Thank you. Anything else from council? All right, entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So
Council
moved.
Whiting.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Council Mokel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 3A, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. The first item on your agenda tonight is a celebratory item for us here at the city. It is resolution number 7539, a resolution of appreciation for Todd Brinkhouse. Mr. Brinkhouse became a full-time employee of the city 40 years ago this month. And before that, he worked for us on a part-time or seasonal basis. I'm not allowed to tell you how old he was when he started, but I can tell you he was a young pup. I tried looking back through our files this afternoon to see what we paid a Public Works employee in 1975, but the earliest rate I could find was from 1978, when we paid about $286 a week to our full-time Public Works employees. 40 years has brought a lot of change. The city has grown tremendously, and so has the work of maintaining it. In 1975, Shakopee was a city of less than 9,000 residents, whereas today we have almost 40,000. When Todd started work for the city, one of his tasks was grading our gravel roads, and I'm told that he was quite good at it. Today there are significantly more miles of roads and acres of parkland to be maintained, and a vast array of new equipment and technology to do it with. Public Works Superintendent Mike Hollander has worked with Todd for the past 34 years, and when I was asking him about Todd earlier today, he told me, every department has its character, and Todd is ours. He also told me that Todd can operate every piece of equipment and do every job there is in the Public Works Department. Lastly, Todd tells it like it is, and once he has, he moves on. A supervisor's dream. Over 40 years, Todd has spent countless hours plowing streets, mowing parks, and maintaining the city's sewer system. Whether in the heat of the summer or on a cold, snowy night, it's not always glamorous work, but it results in safer roads, more enjoyable parks, and a dependable sewer system for the daily benefit of our residents. We often review a person's career like this when they are departing or retiring. Fortunately, that is not the case here. After we recognize him tonight, Todd and his colleagues will be back at work before the sun is up tomorrow morning. But not many people work for one organization for 40 years, and not many organizations are fortunate enough to have the service of such a long-standing and dedicated employee. So we wanted to take a moment tonight to recognize Todd and to extend our thanks and congratulations for 40 years of dedicated service to the city of Shakopee, its residents, businesses, and visitors. Sure. Step in there.
I can stand in the back or something.
Right. I do believe that you're very much one of the only ones. Let's go forward a little bit here.
40 years? Wow. Yeah, so next time I'm back, I'll probably be for retirement. Oh,
It's easy, mental wages.
Oh,
Make it official.
all right. We do have to offer the resolution. Sorry. Todd's already gone, but we haven't done his actual resolution yet. So we need to entertain a motion for Resolution 7539. Councilor Lehman.
Offer a resolution 7539, resolution of appreciation for Todd A. Brinkhouse.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Luce. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Is that all we need for that?
Yep, we're all good.
All right, item number 4, consent business. Anything to remove or add to consent this evening? Councilor Lehman.
Just want to note a correction on the meeting minutes. So it would be 4F2 under 10D1. It has a vote that's 2 to 4. And the vote is 2 to 3. The language is correct, that just the numbers are wrong.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else? All right. Entertain a motion to consent business. Councilor Lehman.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Ms. Wilson, could you please read the consent business?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 4B1 adopts resolution number 7537, approving the VCET grant award with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Justice Programs for the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force for 2015. 4B2 authorizes the purchase of 7 Motorola portable radios for the police department in the amount of $27,116.25. 4C1 adopts resolution number 7354, receiving a report and calling for a public hearing for the 2015 street reconstruction project, project number 2015-1. 4D1 authorizes appropriate city officials to enter into memorandums of understanding with the city's 3 union groups, and adopts resolution number 7538, increasing the employer contribution to employees' post-employment healthcare savings plans. 4D2 approves the position description for the newly created position of Victim and Community Services Coordinator in the Police Department, and authorizes its placement in grade 5 of the non-union pay plan. 4D3 authorizes the promotion of Officer Josh Davis to the position of Sergeant with the Police Department, effective January 12, 2015. 4D4 adopts resolution number 7510, authorizing compensation for the acting city administrator. 4E1 adopts resolution number 7536, accepting the work of Northwest Asphalt, Inc. on Riverside Fields Park improvements, and authorizes final payment on project number PR 2012-1. 4F1 approves the payment of bills and electronic transfers in the amount of $2,338,742.40. 4F2 approves the minutes of the December 2nd, 2014 City Council meeting with the correction for the vote noted. 4F3 approves a temporary on-sale liquor license for the Shakopee All-Night Graduation Party fundraiser for February 19th, 2015 at Canterbury Park, 1100 Canterbury Road. 4F4 approves the listed council meeting policies and procedures for 2015. 4F5 designates the Shakopee Valley News as the official newspaper for the city of Shakopee for 2015. And 4F6 approves the 2015 council officer and liaison appointments as listed.
Very well done. Thank you. Any discussion on those items? Councilor Lehman.
Can we just approve half of the bill list and save a ton of money?
You can vote however you would like.
Hey, it was one shot.
It was worth a shot. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We move on to item number 6A, public hearing for 2015 currency exchange license for DRM LLC.
You missed
Item 5.
recognition of citizens.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was on the wrong page. 5, recognition of involved citizens by City Council. Sorry, I got you off out of your back row there early, Julie. Item 5, anyone here to discuss items that are not currently on the agenda tonight? You have 5 minutes. All right, seeing none, we're going to move. Oh, Shauna? Sorry, I skipped your spot.
Okay. My name is Shauna Ruthenbeck. I live at 1120 Dakota Street, and I've been a resident of Shakopee for about 18 years. Thank you, council and staff, for the opportunity to speak about my concerns.
Shauna, can you pull the microphone down a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Up until the last few weeks, I have to admit, I have not spent a lot of time thinking about our city's governance and processes. Most of the time, what I see and hear seems on the up and up. I'm busy, I work hard, and I voted for the people I think best represent myself and my community, and I trust those in service to do a good job. The last council meeting, a majority of those representatives voted for the forced resignation of Mr. McNeil, our city administrator. I spoke out of concern, as my perception of the situation was that an upright, loyal public servant was being pushed out because he did not meet the current council's vision. I am still very unclear on what that means. I have spent hours since then scouring social media, past council meetings, the paper, etc., searching for some fair justification. I read there were performance issues on one Twitter account, that he had done nothing wrong in council footage, and that a change in leadership was needed. The reasons seemed contradictory and honestly weak. In addition, if there were performance issues, why was Mr. McNeil not coached during the year? If there were issues, I should think that he would know about them, yet it said in the paper this move caught him by surprise. I read that the city's finance director had submitted her resignation. I read that we need about $83 million to add on to the high school or build a new one. I read the Tennis Association wants to raise $8 million and put up a tennis center. I read we're authorizing $75,000 to do a study for the community center that would cost around $35 million. I read my tax bill and property assessment. I know the general levy went up. I know residents are being assessed thousands of dollars for street improvements. We are building parks, trails, adding personnel, and giving raises, and I'm overwhelmed by the amount of change and the pace of it. I tried to figure out who voted for what, but unless I go through every meeting's minutes, I can't figure out who is voting with who and how often. I also read the city council's goals, and I noted the agenda items had a goal noted by each. I read about budget overruns in a few departments, overruns in 2014 that totaled over $1.7 million, and I wonder why. I feel very uninformed and totally unprepared to fully look at or watch what's happening in our council and with our community. And I feel a great need to know more. So therefore, I'm here to ask for two things. The first is I would like the council to consider a city dashboard. I would ask the dashboard to contain information that is easy to read, graphical, and comprehensive. I would like to know things like, what is the city budget and where is it in relation to each of the last 5 years? I'd like to know about what the overruns were for each year and why. I'd like to see our taxes, levies, and referendum fees trended. I don't always know the right words. I'd like to know when one referendum ends and the next begins. And very much, I would like to see the voting records of our city council members in an easy-to-read format. Second, I would like to ask the city to consider this. Not necessarily the council, although I'm asking the council to bring this question to the voters, or somehow represent this idea. I would like the city to consider increasing the city council to 7. This is actually something suggested by my husband. I think it would cost us about $14,000. To me, that's cheap compared to the numbers that I'm seeing with all the changes that are happening. I believe we need a council that truly represents our city, and we're getting big. It seems to me that it's far too easy to get 2 votes and make something happen. And it seems to me that the voter is not getting fair representation. Lastly, I need to add something about perceptions. Last council meeting, a comment was made about the group of people that turned out to object to Mr. McNeil's dismissal. The comment was something about how all his friends showed up to defend him. Please let me set that record straight. I did not speak because I'm Mr. McNeil's friend. I hardly know him. I only respect the job he did, and I've known what the city's done. I don't think anybody here came here as friends. I think they came here out of true concern for our city and what the perception was to the rest of the community about how things happened. I'm still stunned, and I'm very unpleasantly shocked that these people that we voted in the past, that are our community leaders, that serve Scott County, the city of Shakopee, spoke so strongly in objection, and nobody stopped for a moment. You dismissed them and their earnest concerns, and those appeals really felt like they meant nothing. and I'm truly at a loss about the whole thing. So thank you for your time. I hope you consider my suggestions.
Thank you.
Your question
Yeah.
for her.
Ms. Ruthenbeck, Council Lehman has a question for you.
I'm a pussycat. There's no reason to be afraid of me. What's a dashboard?
A lot of corporations use a dashboard. It's usually on a web page, and it will list goals and measures that a company wants to look at in a fairly brief format. You can divide it out by quarters, you can divide it out by money, you can divide it out by whatever measure makes sense for your business. And you can color-code it, stuff like red, yellow, green. Red, we're in trouble. Yellow, it's overrunning. Green, it's great, right? But it's a very graphical way of telling a large audience what's going on so that people can be well informed. And that's my goal. You know, I have no idea. I'm not involved in politics. So to me, I want to know more, and it's overwhelming for a citizen to go back through things and try to figure out what's going on in truth. So a dashboard to me seems like a really great thing. Does that
Anything
help?
else? Councilor Luce.
It's not for you. I just, if everybody's done with her, I'd have something I'd like to say. I'd like to offer the citizens of Shakopee an apology for my actions in the last council meeting. It wasn't professional. I don't plan on ever doing it again. I let my emotions get the best of me. So please accept my apology, and I will endeavor to be more professional in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. You gotta come on up and you gotta sign in and the whole rigmarole.
Yeah.
Even though you're old hat at it by now. I didn't mean your actual hat. I just meant that you were,
Seasoned at it.
yes.
I believe it's an appropriate thing, I guess, to do.
You can put it back on because I feel guilty about it now.
I still got some hair up there, so it's all good.
Now is that a shit on
Stick
me?
around, we can take care of that here for you.
I guess I saw on the agenda on the website, I believe last night, that you guys are going to be discussing the Henderson project that's on 5th and Lewis, or is that taken off the agenda tonight?
That was on the last council agenda.
Was that the informational, did they actually, did you guys send out slips for that, for informational meetings on that?
I know there's another one coming up with,
We discussed the
EDAC,
overview
is
of
it?
the design.
Is that what that was?
Yep.
Okay.
We didn't make any formal decisions on anything. We gave staff feedback on some of the thoughts and comments that the planning commission had on it.
Who's, I guess I got some questions asked. I should have wrote them down, but I work a little late. So I was wondering, whose land is it? Is it the churches? Or is it the cities?
it's the churches, but I'm gonna stop you just for a second. Mr. Lee,
Yes.
is this coming back to the planning commission? It is correct in the near future?
It is. It's not on this Thursday's agenda. If you want, why don't you give me a call tomorrow? My number is 952-233-9346.
I can probably
Or
find my-
call the general number,
Okay.
and they'll direct you to me, and we can talk a little bit further about it.
And the only reason I'm saying that is because there's gonna be there's a public hearing at the planning commission
Right.
yet to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll answer if you have any quick questions tonight, but we're not gonna take a ton of time
Right.
to answer a lot of questions. So if there's, the planning commission has the public hearing for it, and Mr. Leek will let you know when that is, when you give us a call. And then it'll also come to the city probably for additional things as well. So it's got a whole process to go through yet.
Right.
But do you have any quick questions we can answer?
Well, I guess this is the easiest question. How do you stop something like that from getting built?
You go through the planning commission,
Go through
public,
everything?
yep,
Go through all the hoops?
yep. Council Lehman.
And I'm sure the lawyer will jump on me if I'm wrong, but under state statute, because this is in our process of the planning commission, city council, and under review, today we cannot sit here individually telling you we support something or don't support something. It's not proper
Right.
or legal, so
Okay.
we can
And
tell
there's
you.
nothing yet to support or
Right.
not support.
Right,
It hasn't
we
gone through
we
the
looked at a
process.
basic overview concept plan, kinda offered our input on it. We don't know if that's what's coming back or not, haven't seen it yet. when it does come back to us, it would be the time for you to come to this body. You're certainly welcome to go to the planning commission and voice your opinions and expressions there as well. That's
Okay.
part of the due process.
Alrighty.
Mayor, maybe I can add a little bit of detail. I don't know if you heard or recall from the conversation, but one of the things that has to occur before that project can even be considered at the Board of Adjustment Planning Commission is a text amendment. And I will check on when that public hearing is scheduled and let you know if we talk tomorrow.
Okay.
Once that happens, then they can actually make an application for what's called a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit does require a public hearing. People within 350 feet of the property actually get written notice under our ordinance. But if you're interested in that notice, we can make a note of that and add it to the list.
Okay.
All right?
And if you
great.
could, before you go, state your name and address for
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
record for us.
Christopher Taylor, 532 Spencer Street South.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to item number 6A, public hearing this time for 2015 currency exchange license for DRM LLC, doing business as Excel Pawn. Ms. Linehan.
Correct. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and public. Before you this evening is a resolution number 7535, and what we are asking Council to approve is the application of DRM LLC, doing business as Excel Pawn, for a currency exchange license. This business is located at 450 First Avenue West. A little history. On November 18th, Council approved previously the money exchange currency license. This is the second item that has come forward in the past 2 months requesting a currency exchange license. Application is made to the state. Once this action and resolution is approved, the resolution will be forwarded to the state, who will then issue the license for the currency exchange to this business. This has been action that has been previously approved by the council. It has been reviewed by the police department for their due diligence, and all has been approved. Just simply awaiting approval of the resolution, which will then allow them a currency exchange. They do not have approval until they receive their actual documents from the state.
All right, this is a public hearing. Can we have entertain a motion to open public hearing? Councilor Mogul?
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Do we have a second? Councilor Luce, any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Any questions for Ms. Linehan? Councilor Lehman?
Do they currently have a currency exchange license?
They do. It expired December 31st.
Okay.
There was some issues that were holding this up at the state. When we received their application December 12th, it was already too late to post and put for the last meeting in December.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, it is a public hearing, so anyone in the audience like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Councilor Whiting, do
Move to close the public hearing.
we have a second?
A second.
Second by Councilor Mokel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Councilor Whiting,
Offer resolution number 7535, a resolution approving the application DRM LLC, doing business as Excel Pawn, for a currency exchange license and move its adoption.
thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Councilor Luce, any discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we're going to move on to 8F1, but before we do that, I'd like to move down to the tables down there, so entertain a motion for a 5-minute break to reseat everyone. Councilor Lehman,
How many items do we bring down there with us?
the rest of the meeting.
All right.
We still need a motion. You want to move?
Motion to do what?
5-minute.
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. We're in recess for 5 minutes.
Did you want to do the
pull back into session here since everybody's ready. All right, we are back in regular session, starting off with item 8F1, transition plan and first quarter 2015 work plan. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. At the December 16th council meeting, I was asked to prepare a transition plan to guide our work and prioritize our work for the coming months while the search is underway for our next city administrator. And so what I have put forward for your consideration tonight is a plan that covers 4 areas. The first is our staffing needs here at the city. The second is a review of the existing work plan that was adopted by the council about 6 or 7 months ago now. The third is some suggested council focuses for the next few months. And the fourth is a question to you in regards to whether or not you're interested in a facilitated workshop. The first item, maybe we can handle these one and then do questions and discussion and then move on to 2, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
The first item does address the staffing needs of the city. The city currently has 14 vacant or soon-to-be vacant full-time positions. That is a large number for us. It's the result really of 3 things. We have 3 positions that are vacant due to normal turnover of things. Individuals have resigned to move on to other opportunities, and we're in the process of filling those established existing positions. We have another 4 positions that are vacant as a result of the retirement incentive package that we put forward in August of this year. And the final individuals who accepted that package departed us last week with the end of the year. And then we have 4 or 5 positions that are newly created in the 2014 or 2015 budget that have yet to be filled. So they're not all vacant for the same reason, but nonetheless, they are a need that needs to be filled. Starting from the top of the organizational chart down is the city administrator position. I'm recommending that the council hire an executive recruitment firm to assist you in your search for a new city administrator. This is definitely the norm for cities our size when they go to look for a chief, a city administrator or a city manager position. And the next item on your agenda is the specifics of who's being recommended, what their approach would be, and what their cost would be. The second position is that of finance director and city clerk, currently held by Ms. Linehan, who has previously submitted her resignation effective January 30th. I have spoken to Ms. Linehan, and she is willing to be flexible on her departure date by a matter of a few days or a few weeks. We greatly appreciate that, and I anticipate we will likely need to take her up on that. However, we have a longer term issue than a few days or a few weeks can solve. The finance director is a key position in our management structure, and one that I would anticipate your next city administrator will want to play a role in filling and selecting. Therefore, it's my recommendation that we seek an interim finance director who would serve the city into the month of September sometime. This person might not work a full-time basis, a full 40 hours a week, something along the lines of 30 hours a week, should be able to meet our needs and keep all of our financial business moving forward on a steady and legally compliant basis. There are individuals out there that have retired from finance director jobs or moved on to consulting type work that are willing generally to take on these types of roles. So with your permission, we would begin looking for an interim finance director starting tomorrow and try to identify someone that could come in, work with Ms. Linehan for approximately a week side by side, and then carry on for us during this process. The reason I target the month of September is the conclusion of an interim finance director is that the schedule for hiring a new city administrator likely puts us on or about May 26th, the day after Memorial Day, maybe June 1st, for a new administrator to start. And then I would presume that that individual would like a little bit of time to get to better know our organization, our existing staffing, and structure before having to make a hiring decision. So that would give the new administrator approximately 3 months to move forward on that key hiring.
Will the finance director or fill-in person, if you go out and look for somebody to fill that, would multiple potential people come back, or is this just a decision that staff makes, or what's your what are you thinking?
My thinking is that we would come back with a recommendation and qualifications, of someone to fill that position. Depending on what kind of response we receive and the number of qualified applicants we have at our disposal, there could conceivably be an interview process. And my suggestion would be maybe we take 1 or 2 council members. If we do more than that, then we have to do them in public, and for an interim job, it's just drags out the timeline. The purpose is to find somebody quickly when you're looking for an interim role.
Okay.
What would happen if what are the downsides of just hiring someone new?
I think you would spend a longer period of time filling the position if you were looking for a permanent replacement. Our goals in looking for an interim person are very much subject matter expertise and qualifications. When you look to fill a long-term role like this that's key to your management team, then issues of fit and style, strengths, weaknesses, that type of thing come into play much more. You don't spend, and those take longer to investigate and draw out. So a normal department head hiring search for us would probably take 60 to 90 days.
We just don't have that time.
Okay.
Well, I think the city administrator, the new city administrator would want to have input in on that, and that whole part of fit has to do with that relationship too. So I think that is key.
I would think that all of our key department heads would probably want to have some involvement in the long-term finance director along with the administrator.
So how does this impact 2016 budgeting then, if we were interim?
It should go smoothly. That's another reason why having somebody here through September makes sense. You should have your new administrator on board right about the time that we get ready to start budget. As you know, we do budget work throughout the summer, and then we arrive at a preliminary levy that needs to be completed by September 15th. If we can find an interim that'll get us through the adoption of that preliminary levy. But again, we're looking largely in an interim for a technician, somebody that makes sure that we are entirely compliant and that the work is flowing smoothly through the department. The leadership on that budget work is going to come from your new administrator and the 5 of you as the elected officials.
And then my last question, is there reorganization at all that needs to be done with that? Are we going to keep finance and clerk together still, or are we going to try and separate that, or what's the plan
I
there?
think serious consideration needs to be given to that question.
Okay.
We combined the finance director and city clerk position approximately 3 years ago, and this is the perfect opportunity to step back and say, is that working? Is that still the way that we want to go? And as we get later on, both in this conversation about a transition plan as well as into looking at workshop topics upcoming, we have an organizational study currently underway, the results of which I've got tentatively scheduled to come to you on February 3rd. So that will inform where you want to go on the long term with that position.
Okay. Does anyone have any concerns or different directions they'd like to see with that?
My feeling is we need to move ahead and fill the position. We can't rely on Ms. Linehan to hang around forever.
Fill it with interim or fill it with full?
Fill it with interim, because
Okay.
give her a chance to guide the person for a week or so, and then let her retire out.
Okay. Is there any direction you need from us there?
I think I'm good.
Okay. And if there's not the talent that you'd like to see available for that type of position, I'm assuming we'll go to Plan B, which would be hire someone full-time and put that out there. Is that
Correct.
okay?
There are also, in a very short interim, we could use some financial services firms if we decide to go the permanent route and Ms. Linehan were to depart before we got that fixed. There are, smaller cities don't necessarily have a finance director. Some of them have a firm that serves as their finance director. I don't see that working for us on a long-term basis, but if we're looking at, a 1-month gap or something, that might be an option for us.
Okay.
We're not gonna be able to turn around and hire a full-time in 30 days. So
No.
we would be looking at hiring out a firm for a couple of months.
If we go full-time. So.
Oh,
Just a
okay.
final, would the interim finance director have the opportunity to apply for the full-time position?
I wouldn't see why we would exclude that. I would doubt that we would have a lot of candidates for the interim position that would be interested. Quite often, someone you find to take on this interim role is someone that has recently retired, maybe, and is interested in working on a more casual or part-time.
But we wouldn't
less
exclude
con-
that if it was.
I wouldn't recommend that we rule it out, no.
All right, any issues with that?
Nope.
All right,
Looking at our other positions that are open, I'm recommending kind of a three-prong approach. Typically, I manage all of our full-time hiring processes, and while I'm serving as acting city administrator, I feel that I would continue to manage our key leadership or supervisory positions that are open. The first priority on that would be a new building official. Our previous building official retired December 31st. So that would be the first priority for my own hiring efforts, and then hopefully we'd be ready to move on to a new IT director hiring process once the building official was well underway. Secondly, as Councilmember Lehman suggested, I reached out to Scott County and their Administration and Employee Relations Department. And they have very generously and graciously agreed to assist us with hiring that we need. And so my recommendation is that we take our entry level and our frontline positions that we have open and seek the county's help in filling those. The first would be our mechanic, then we would probably move to the open maintenance operator position that we have in Public Works. Those are fairly well defined positions, they're concise, they're similar to positions that the county has in its own staff and that their employee relations staff is accustomed to filling for their own needs as well. So they are willing to do that.
Sorry, they would just insert our, policy descriptions and job descriptions and stuff like that.
no one at home can hear you.
In the process, they would just use our
Exactly.
information in place of their information.
For example, I've already sent them by email, here's the wage scale we have for mechanic, here's our job description with its minimum qualifications. And they'll still be working with our supervisors, so they'll be directly in touch with, say, the Public Works superintendent. And instead of Mr. Hollander working with me to formulate questions, review applications, select candidates for interviews, he will work directly with the employee relations staff from the county. And then lastly, a few of the positions, particularly some of the new positions authorized in the 2015 budget, we'll just put third on the list and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. But my thought is we want to fill the open positions that we are accustomed to having in our staff. And we'll still see the benefits of those new positions. It might be a month or two later than it otherwise would have been. So that is my recommendations as how we tackle our staffing challenges.
I don't think anybody has a problem. I think we're,
Okay.
Nice job.
yep.
Thank you. The second thing I have on the transition plan is just a quick review of our existing work plan. And I thought I'd put this up on the screen, except it didn't print out. Do you have that? Thank you. Still pretty hard to read, but hopefully this document looks familiar to you all. These are special projects and initiatives that were previously recommended and approved by the city council. I have to admit, part of this is it's just good to look at a to-do list that's got things crossed off on it. So these are projects that staff in different departments have been working on over the last 6 months or so. They included completion of the garbage hauler transition, the conducting of a professional community survey, the transit merger, an updated sign ordinance is on this list. What else? Some pay policies and rates for our paid-on-call firefighters, expansion of the use of box alarms, an ordinance permitting urban chickens under certain conditions. The Main Street program is on here. So you'll see several of these things have been completed. A few are still currently underway. I would point to the issue an RFP for a railroad quiet zone. Staff received the go-ahead to proceed with that at the last council meeting, and so that railroad quiet zone issue is something that staff would continue to work on during this transition period. What else is underway? Oh, and under Parks and Recreation, future of the community center is obviously an item that we have currently underway with several feasibility studies on tap for later this quarter of the year. So, 2 items that I am recommending we put on hold until the new city administrator is hired are the initiation of a performance measurement program and the development and implementation of a new employee performance evaluation system. Both of those are time-intensive projects, and I just, I don't see us being able to get to them and do them well and comprehensively with everything else that is going on currently.
Are you gonna go through each one of these boxes or just in general?
I wasn't planning on it. If you have
Okay.
any questions or.
I have one question. The 800 megahertz radio with the PD, is it replacement of existing radios and staying with the 800 megahertz, or is it swapping out to something different? And the reason I ask is I was here for the implementation of the original changeover to that, and it was pretty expensive changeover to the 800, so.
I'm 90% certain that this is the same item that you acted on the consent agenda tonight. You authorized the purchase of, I think it was 7 new Motorola. And if you read the staff memo on that, it's simply lifespan of the radios. It seems like we just bought them, but some of the early ones we bought have already reached their lifespan.
Well, there was the equipment cost originally, and then there was the actual infrastructure for that equipment, and the infrastructure cost was pretty substantial, where we partnered with Scott County and some surrounding counties and
Right.
cities and stuff to make it
Yeah.
and I just, if we have to change that whole system and infrastructure, need to know that, because that's pretty expensive.
No, I don't believe that. This is a continuation of the path that we have
Okay.
been on, not a new direction. Are there questions about any of the other items on this work plan?
How many current full-time people do we have?
In the 2014 budget, there were 137 full-time staff positions. And I believe the 2015 budget authorized 5 additional staff positions. So that would bring us to 142, hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay, I had gotten a different number previously.
Well, we're down 14, so whatever your number was, it's 14 less, you know? And sometimes they classify as seasonals, one side or the other, based on the time of year. Summertime, you got all them seasonals running recreational programs.
Those include the FTEs, right?
No, those are actual full-time
those are
employees.
actual stuff,
We have
okay.
many more FTEs because in addition to the 137 full-time employees, we have 46 paid-on-call firefighters. And then, depending on the time of year, we have anywhere from 75 to 150 part-time or seasonal employees. Some of them, working just a couple hours a week, and some of them working, 15 to 20 hours a week at the community center and so forth. So our total headcount varies tremendously depending on the time of the year.
I think for our focus, we want to be looking at the permanent full-time number.
That's typically where council has, our authorizations on the part-time level are dollar amounts. We have a budget, and sometimes we fill that budget through 3 people working 10 hours a week, and sometimes 2 people working 15 hours a week, and that varies quite a bit and is largely falls into the Parks and Rec Department and Public Works to some smaller extent.
Programming.
All right.
All right. Moving on, the third item in the transition plan is some suggested areas of council focus for the coming months. Earlier on your agenda tonight, you adopted meeting policies and procedures for 2015 that call for the council to return to the goal of having 1 workshop meeting a month and 1 business meeting a month, with the workshop meeting falling on the first meeting of the calendar month and the business meeting on the second, or in other words, the third Tuesday. So it's my recommendation that at least for the next few months that those workshops be devoted to 3 topics: the organizational future of the city, western growth of the city, and the future of our recreational and community amenities. When I say our organizational future, that includes the search for a new city administrator and the council working on what your desired skills, traits, and abilities are for a new city administrator. We also have numerous projects in the work that are on the verge of being ready to come back to the council for your information. These include the phone survey of residents, the IT strategic plan, a city hall feasibility study, and a subset of that was an organizational study looking at our organizational chart and how we expected it to change in the coming years. So it's my plan right now that at your February 3rd workshop meeting, if it's agreeable to you, we would have the results of the phone survey presented to you. And we would also have Mr. Dave Unmacht from Springstead here presenting to you the organizational study and a look at how we structure the city organization. That will be helpful as we start to talk about finance director and city clerk and where do we want to go with that, as well as planning for some upcoming retirements that we can see on the horizon. So that would be the February workshop topic there. The second conversation is one on westward growth of the city. We are running into we have a limited supply of ready to develop land for commercial, industrial, and residential growth. We are in no ways out of land, but staff in the Public Works Department, Economic Development, Community Development, we're all on the same page that this is a subject that we really need to tackle in 2015. It's not going to be a one meeting kind of subject. So there's a real need to examine expansion of the city, particularly into areas south of the new 169 interchange. This is going to involve, like I said, multiple conversations, meetings, and partners, landowners, the townships, the county, SPUC in the expansion of infrastructure. So that's another recommended topic. I don't have that pegged in at a real specific date just yet. We may do some preliminary conversations at your next meeting on that subject. By the looks of it, we don't have a lot of business items for you on January 20th. We have some, but we may start to dip our toes into that.
On that topic, the growth and how we handle that topic, I think we need, as council, to have a big conversation about residential homes and what types of housing we want to see and what how that all gets put together. Because as the Met Council housing plan comes through, we need to implement that in some fashion, and that will change how we're handling things. So I would like sooner than later at a council level, and maybe it comes to planning first, or I don't know how that makes the most sense, but to have a residential growth discussion as part of that.
I think we're going to have to back up just a little bit, but I understand what you're saying, but I think I'm looking at this, working on it for a few years now, is I'm envisioning that we're going to sit down and figure out with the township how we're going to do this orderly through the annexation agreements that we have. I'm almost envisioning a land use plan. That's something this body really needs to think about, because we're going to decide what uses are going to go where around that intersection in our vision. And then we decide what we actually want the end uses to look like in the design through planning, whether it's housing or commercial or stores or whatever. But I think that's going to be the first step, important part to figure out. What is it we all want around that intersection? And then, do you do the normal type land use mapping that will put some kind of commercial around the intersection and then buffer that commercial with some higher or lesser uses, whether it's light industrial or higher densities, and then go up the bluff and put high-end housing in the bluff?
Well, I think that's exactly why this is a great conversation starter. I mean, rather than let development drive some of this stuff like it has in the past, and especially in this barren farmland area.
Right, but what I'm saying, Jay, is instead of looking at what that high-end housing, if that's what we want to do in certain areas, what that actual house looks like, we need to decide, where do we actually want that?
Right. Yeah, guys-
I think we're all agreeing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying the exact same thing that I intended to say.
Yeah, residential growth discussion,
Yeah.
or not.
I think the priority should be the westward growth. Everything else should be taking a back seat, because if we want to finance a lot of these other projects, we're going to need the tax base from the westward growth.
Well, we've got a significant amount of tax base coming in right now.
We've got a significant amount of expenditures planned.
Right.
I would argue, though, that the commercial and industrial development that we've enjoyed in the last few years, those areas were planned out for that use and planned for service
Already.
years ago. I mean, it took a long time to get to the point where we could welcome a Shutterfly in a particular place or an Emerson on a particular lot. And looking down the road, we aren't prepared so that we can continue, at the pace that we are. So we can get caught up. It's not a crisis type situation by any means, but it is time to turn our attention to that
Needs to be priority one.
and getting that going.
After the organizational.
If I can, just to, mention, Chris, the difference between this and land at Shutterfly or any of the other businesses that have come to Shakopee on, they were on City of Shakopee land, where we had all the jurisdictional controls, land use, zoning, utilities, infrastructure. This is an area that somebody else has jurisdictional control, the township. We have an agreement with them, it's an orderly annexation agreement that has some guidelines in it. But both of us realize that at some point that's gonna happen. We just need to jointly have it mapped out so that we're both in agreement for that, so that we can actually start planning infrastructure, which is gonna be some pretty serious infrastructure that has to go in there, and we can't really plan that until we know what the end use is gonna be.
I think Ms. Wilson mentioned the partners with the township and especially Spuck and getting all of those different things in line and working in that direction.
It's a very complex issue because from the township side, they've got revenue coming off this property that pays, whether our fire trucks go there, whatever, and they pay for that in their taxes to the township. As we absorb some of that property into the city through annexation and develop it, they lose that revenue. So how do they maintain their operational functions with less revenue? Obviously, their operational costs go down. It's just really complex.
Yes, and we're fortunate, Councilmember Lehman, that Scott County has done us a great favor and the township a great favor and studied that exact question.
Yep.
Is looking at possible future annexation areas and what would the loss of that tax base mean to specifically Jackson Township. I just got a copy of that report yesterday in my email box and have read through it once. So that's exactly the type of thing that we'll be looking to bring forward and have presented to you and have further discussion on. So.
Perfect.
And then the third item that I would recommend for a council focus is one that you've already launched and kicked off, and that's the future of our recreational and community amenities. We have feasibility studies underway. The consultants that have been hired to perform this work tell us that the work is still on schedule. So we will be looking at workshops on the topic of the future of the community center, costs of operating an expanded facility, likely revenues, means of paying for it, all of those types of things. Hopefully starting in March, but very possibly continuing into April. Again, probably not a one meeting subject, but rather a series of conversations. So that is my recommendation for how we utilize your workshop time in the coming months. Does council have any other topics that you see as a higher priority than those for your time?
I think you've done some good research here, and I think that's the focus.
Very thorough.
I love having a plan. Matt?
My concern is we're short-staffed in some very important positions right now. And, there's a lot that just these couple items, just the land item is pretty extensive thing. It's not something that's gonna happen overnight. It's got a lot of different things to it. It's gonna take quite a bit of staff time and council time to work on. So I just wanna make sure that we're not, I just don't wanna put too much on everybody's back when we're so shorthanded, you know? Usually when you got a penalty in hockey going on and you're short staffed, you kinda go on a defensive and just try to hold your own until you're full strength again.
Well, if I may
That's
add, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about this
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
council level, so that when a new administrator comes on, we have a focus, and we've said, well, here's the direction we've decided to go. We've talked about it. Council is, 4-1, or whatever it might end up
Yep.
being, moving in that direction, and
Well, that leads us to the next item.
So that gets us going. So I think that's great to have it for that new administrator.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think there's a lot we can do on the.
So how comfortable, Chris,
Growth,
are you with moving forward with these types of items?
I'm comfortable with moving forward on these types of items. I certainly don't want to suggest that they're all three going to be crossed off the list in the next 5 months, especially the westward growth one. But
Do you have a timeline that you're thinking with westward growth? Are you gonna, 6 months?
just, I think, like I said, I anticipate us hopefully spending a good half an hour on some really introductory things related to annexation and our current agreement as early as your next meeting. But it could then get put aside if the community center studies become available and ready for your topic. But I don't want us sitting here waiting for those studies or a new city administrator. I think we can make progress forward in the meantime on that topic.
Agreed.
Well, in the meantime, Michael Leak, myself, and Bruce, and the county study can probably get down and just go over that study, get caught up on it. I haven't seen that study, and then maybe sit down with the township and go over that study.
So,
When was the last time we did any annexation?
Mr. Michael, help me out
The
here.
last annexation was the property on the west side of Marystown Road, County Road 15, south of 69. As I recall, it's about 323 acres total. That was done in 2006. It was when D.R. Horton thought that they had a project for the entire site, and of course, they only closed on one roughly 70-acre parcel. So that was the last annexation that the city engaged in. Just two additional things, and I know acting city administrator is probably aware of them. I have already reached out to a couple of consulting firms to see what the order of magnitude of cost might be to do a concept land use study for that general area involving, I think I indicated at least 600 acres. So the already annexed land plus some of the land that was covered in that Scott County study. And it appears that we're talking about $75,000 to $100,000 order of magnitude. If we start getting into more detailed drainage, bluff, and other kinds of issues, obviously that would grow. So if council wants us to move more aggressively on that, we would put that into an RFP and actually provide it to consulting engineers and planners to see what they would offer for that kind of thing.
And what would that be for again?
It would be for a master plan or concept study for that entire area to really talk about, Mayor, what you were talking about earlier, and that is what uses, where is the city interested in? You know, in my time as a planner, the question that I get asked most by developers is, what does the city want to see there? The comprehensive land use plan doesn't really tell them what kind of development, it just tells them a broad category of uses. And so this would really tell them more about where do the roads go, which kinds of housing in which locations and why, and what's the infrastructure that you need. The other thing that you should be aware of is that Ms. Wilson and Ms. DiMaggio and I will be meeting with a developer who was involved with Dean Lakes and TriStar, which, by the way, is still a live project. And on Thursday, I set that meeting up so that we could talk about the roughly 300 acres that's already in the city and what kind of interest there might be from their perspective as a developer. So we are doing some things already to move it forward.
Perfect.
Mr. Mayor, a master plan, in my view, will also bring together multiple disciplines. So we do have the Bluff line out there, and so it'll talk to us about development costs, and we may want to develop that area east to west. We may want to develop it north to south due to infrastructure costs, and also bring in things like market conditions. We'll get the expert opinions of home developers and business park developers of which areas they think there's a need for in Scott County, which areas they think they can market and sell for certain parcels. So it brings multiple disciplines together to come up with a plan that is not only meets the priorities of the council and the community, but that's feasible and doable and practical at enough of a level that we can really see it through. So.
Good. Any other
Would you-
questions?
Mr. Leek, would you think that jumping into that without any discussion with the township might, does that harm our relationship with the township?
That's a good question, Counselor Lehman, and my tentative answer is I don't think so. And the reason I don't is we have had meetings over the last couple of years, and I know the mayor and you probably have been involved as well, with township officials and the property owners in the area that we're kind of considering adjacent to the city. So I think they're aware of the concern. I think they're also aware of the fact that with our current orderly annexation agreement, the Met Council considers Jackson Township to be forever rural because there's not a staged plan for bringing land into the city of Shakopee and seeing it develop. And that contrasts with what Prior Lake has with Spring Lake Township, which does have a phasing plan. By the way, they haven't met any of those phasing dates, but the Met Council views it and their system statement will reflect it as future development land. So I think I've talked with board members in the township in the last few months about this personally. I think there's a realization that there needs to be some revision in that annexation agreement to deal with that issue, as well as, when we last met with the property owners in and around 69 and 169, I think the prevalent question was, when are you going to get sewer, water, and roads to me so I can sell my land? I think the interest is there. So this kind of master planning effort that Ms. Wilson is talking about really helps to answer some of those questions and hopefully, I think, acts as something of a marketing tool to developers so that they see it as a feasible place to land projects.
And no one's suggesting that we would proceed with this, in absence of the township or their representatives or the property owners. I think the recommendation is that the city is at a point where it needs to take maybe a more proactive approach and a slightly stronger leadership role, but not that we are going to do it entirely, off on our own.
Put a plan together.
All right, the fourth and final component of the transition plan is the a question to the city council as to whether or not you believe it would be beneficial to have some form of facilitated workshop or retreat amongst the five of yourselves. In the past, we have done these around the start of a new year or a new council member, and we've really focused on some of the things we just finished talking about. What are our priorities for the year going to be? What are our main areas of focus? If we're in agreement that we seem to have a pretty good work plan as far as the topic areas that we are going to be focusing on in the coming months, and given the events that took place in December, there may be some benefits to taking that workshop time this year and looking at it more from a relationship standpoint and communications and talking about process and how decisions get made, how communications are shared and dispersed throughout the group. I have reached out to my colleagues in other cities and asked them if they could recommend anybody to facilitate that, and I was surprised kind of the unanimity that came back. Email after email came back and said, we've used this individual for that, and it was the same individual coming from 7 or 8 cities saying that they had worked. So I do believe I have an individual identified that could perform this kind of work for you, but it is certainly something that the 5 of you need to feel is valuable and useful to go forward with. This isn't a staff-driven type of exercise.
Well, I said it at the last meeting, and I think it's an important aspect, I think, for our community, for our working relationship. To me, some of the citizens feel that there's some trust issues and some communication issues. Whether that feeling they have is, we can't help the way they feel, but getting that out on the table and having those discussions, I think is important for this group, so, my opinion.
I agree as well. I think we need to have a facilitated conversation and work out some of these things.
I think it's a waste of money. We're all adults. Once in a while, some of us, like me, have an outburst, but, we can all get past that. We don't need somebody else playing referee. I think if we just keep in mind we're doing the best for the city, we can get through this.
Been through the process about 4 times with a facilitated workshop. It's a good process. I don't have a problem with it. I won't be a part of it if it's closed. If it's closed, then the public doesn't see, here we're trying to build the public trust, and we can't do that in closed doors.
Well, it can't be closed, can it?
Retreat would be hard for the public to be invited to.
There's a difference between closed and televised. So
Right.
in some years, we have done workshops off camera, and at different locations. We've used the police department training room. We've used Spuck's meeting room just kind of for a change of scenery and so on. So there would be 2 decisions, which would be the council's to make, is where you want to have it and do you want to have it televised. But yes, it will be a legal, open, posted meeting, and anybody from the public that wants to attend in person, we would have, under law, they would be able to attend. The issue before the council is the time of day you host it, the day of the week, the location, and whether or not it is televised.
I, for one, if it's not televised, I will not be there.
I'm second to that.
I don't understand that, so help me out.
How do you build public trust and secrecy?
We're not closing the meeting, we're just not gonna have it televised.
Why not?
Why does it have to be?
Because the public has a right to know what we're doing.
It's still open.
So taped and,
Why do we televise this meeting?
Don't know. Not all councils do.
If it's not gonna be open and public and televised, then it's not worth doing.
There are a number of people that can't get to the meetings. They have the right to see it.
well, there's plenty of space. School board, we could use their facilities. Spuck has the ability to tape things. You could bring in a camera, tape it, and play it for later
You do it
airing.
right here. It's generally just a
right
basically
here.
a hour and a half meeting about, what is your expectation for all of us? What is our expectation for one another? What is our expectations of various staff people? How do we direct various departments to do things? How does that work for you, and how does it work for you? And is there a way that it works for everybody, that everybody can utilize, that enhances the mutual respect of everybody, and put staff in a position that they know what the expectations are from the council or individual members at any given time?
We don't want to facilitate the facilitators program, but.
I'm just going off of what has, happened
My
in
only
the past.
my only concern with that, Matt, is that there's definitely the relationship building piece that needs to get done, which is important as the policy piece. And I'm not saying that we all have to be best friends and hold hands and that kind of thing, but we do have to have a healthy working relationship as we go forward. And I think that tonight is showing that we're doing okay with that. But
Meeting
I think
ain't
it could
done
be.
yet.
Well, thank you for that foreshadowing, I guess. But what I'm saying is that there's room to work on things, and the relationships are very person to person, personal kind of thing. And I guess I don't invite people to come in and, while you're building relationships with other folks, it's not a televised thing. It's and if you don't want to be involved in it, that's fine. We don't need to do it if that's not the kind of council that you want to have. But if you do want to have better relationships with other people, it needs to be a conversation that we can have as candidly and it's not that anybody can't come if they want to and be there at the conversation, but it needs to be able to be a candid discussion about things that just is not conducive to being televised. And so
Well-
if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We can skip it.
I can't be any more candid than I am in my life. So I'll tell you, if this is not going to be televised, I don't know why I would expect anything different from the crap I saw out of you three last month. Okay? So I will not have a part in anything that's not televised because of that reason. I have very little respect for you folks and less trust at this point. You want to build that? You're going to have a workshop where the public can see what's going on, and we're not going to work on kissing and hugging hands. We're going to work on policy and procedural issues that help all of us work evenly the same way for the people that we represent at large, so that there is a mutual respect that starts getting built.
All right, I think that's our answer. We're going to move on to the next item then. Do you need anything else with that, Chris?
No.
Well, Mr. Mayor, maybe just one point.
Please, sir.
It sounds like there's at least 4 council members that think it's at least a good idea to take the next step on this. Am I hearing that right or not?
You may be hearing that, but I'm not willing to do it unless all 5 of us are willing to go there. So it's.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
my
don't
only
want to
point
do it
is
unless it can be done as a
If there is a
body.
consensus to go forward, you may want to let Ms. Wilson.
Can we stop right there procedurally? He doesn't get to decide himself if it takes 5. It doesn't take 5 to decide something on this council. Procedurally, there's a problem right there that you need to get to understand.
Yeah, I agree. It's the majority of the council decide whether to go forward to facilitate a workshop. The point I was going to suggest is that I thought I heard there was a majority at least willing to look into it. And maybe the next step would be to let Chris get a hold of the consultant that she's suggesting, whoever it is, come back to you and give you their input as to what they think the best procedure was. You don't have to follow it.
Right.
You don't have to follow it, but at least you get that input from the facilitator, who presumably has done a lot of these, and may be able to give you with a recommendation as to the best format. You don't have to follow it, but at least you get the input from him, and maybe then take the next step as to whether or not you want to proceed or not.
And in moving that was that there's not a majority. 3 of us don't want to do it for different reasons.
3 of us don't want to do it. You don't want to do it, Mike don't want to do it. Us 3 are saying, yeah, it's a good idea. Exactly which format we use is where we're having a difference of opinion on.
Okay. So what would you like to do?
I would like to have it taped so that the public can see it. If the public wants to come down and sit in the audience and not participate and listen, fine. But they have a right to see what's going on.
Go ahead.
My view right now is if Chris wants to go ahead and talk to a facilitator, that's fine. They may look at some of our tapes and go, I don't want any part of that deal. And then other than that, at this point, I think we just leave it on the table for now, because like I said before, we're all adults. We can get through this. We're gonna have some faux pas, but let's just move on.
I'll go back to what I said. I think it's an important step. Whether it's televised or not, it doesn't matter. I think we need to do it, to me, either way. But you brought up, your action and your communication tonight shows that we need to do this,
Absolutely.
so.
So you're in agreement to televise it?
Either way, yeah.
I just said it didn't matter.
Okay. So
It's
put
televised or
together.
not.
Should I develop more information in a specific?
There we go.
All right, I will do that. That is all I have for 8F1. 8F2 is a subset of that, and whenever you're ready, we can.
Go for it.
All right. Agenda item 8F2 is the specific action to select a search firm for the city administrator recruitment process. There are 2 or 3 firms that do the majority of city administrator and city manager recruitment processes in the Twin Cities area, and I am recommending one of those firms. Their proposal comes in under the name of Waters and Company. They are a fully owned company of Springstead. Springstead is the city's financial advisor. They help us when we do economic development deals. They help with our bond sales. They also have a human resources and organizational component that is currently doing an organizational study for us. And thirdly, they lately have been doing the cities of comparable size to us process. The other firm that works heavily in this area is Brinkmeyer Fersman, also a very professional firm. Looking at their recently completed searches, they tend to specialize a little bit more in smaller communities. Waters and Company has either recently completed or currently working on the cities of Lakeville, Bloomington, Oakdale, and Bemidji, Minnesota, to give you an example. Their proposal has a cost of $21,000 for it. And it would be led by a woman named Sharon Klump, with Mr. Dave Unmacht, who is very familiar with the city and already doing some work for us, serving as kind of second chair, so to speak, on these studies. So the proposal that was attached lays out a timeline for that. It will involve individual conversations with each of you to get a sense of you individually, what you're looking for, and then a public on-camera discussion and formal action to approve what they call a position profile. Completing this kind of search is more than your normal 3 or 4 sentence job ad in the paper. It's a profile of the community, of the city as an organization, things about its staff and its budget and its resources. And then they typically carry, what the council is looking for in its next city manager or administrator, as well as what the council sees as the priority projects for the first year of service for that manager administrator. The consultants will not only handle the recruitment, the initial screening of applications, they'll work with you to develop an interview process, and then once the council has selected a candidate, they will serve as your representative in negotiating a contract with that new person. So
I'll go last.
Okay. Questions? Councilor Luce?
Aren't we getting a little too tied to Springstead? I think they're pretty much handling the bulk of all our research. I think we need to look somewhere else for this one.
Councilor Whiting?
I think Springstead is a tool that we use because it is city-focused on many things, and there's a few other engineering firms that we use that are more general for projects, but Springstead is more focused on the managerial, administrative end of the city city focus. So I don't have a problem with using Springstead. This $21,000 is not a bad price. That's a good deal. Many headhunters will charge 30% of the first year's annual compensation, so that's not a bad price.
Councilor Lehman?
Well, my concern here again is, how do I know that this process isn't stacked? We're talking about what this council wants. It doesn't matter what this council wants. City administrators are here for many years. Councils and mayors come and go like the wind. This is really about what the citizens want in a city administrator, because they're the ones that have the most at stake for the longest haul. It's not about what the next project is or the most important project. It's about the way they handle themselves in various situations to be supposed to be apolitical, obviously of high moral standing and ethics. They need to be fair. They need to be so it's not really about the projects. It's not really about what any individual council member wants for these types of things, because hey, a year or 2, 4 years, whatever, we're out of here, somebody else is in here, and do we then have that council just turn over this position because they don't meet this council's goals? The goals are going to constantly change. You need somebody that's able to look past all that broader picture and actually be able to run the city organization and not represent a individual or a set of goals or a political philosophy. So I'm a little concerned that, we got one proposal here. Why don't we have 3 proposals in front of us? I'm just concerned that basically what's going to happen in this process is the same that's already happened. We're going to have 3 individuals that want X, Y, and Z. They're going to get that, and then the next council is going to have to turn around and get rid of this political city administrator that we just hired and turn around and do the process again. So,
You're casting this specter that, now Dave Ungmacht is the former county administrator who I trust and have respect for. And
30 days ago, I trusted you, so I mean.
I think the whole goal here is to move ahead.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Lehman, if I could address at least a couple of your concerns. I noted that the consultant would work with each of you to develop the position profile and so on. What is in the document that I didn't mention is it's a normal part of their process to also work with city staff and to seek out the input, at least, of your department head and your management team for kind of a bottom-up internal perspective of what's needed in a new leader. And if it's the direction of the city council that you want this consultant to go out and meet with certain community representatives or certain community leaders, or somehow include a community component to this interview process, I know for a fact that they will do that. And that is commonly done in city administrator searches, where you have a resident interview panel. It's not done in every single one, but it's certainly not abnormal to name a community panel. In the candidates interview maybe in front of a few department heads, and then they interview in front of the city council, and then they interview in front of a community panel, and you bring all of those inputs in together. Ultimately, it is this body that needs to make an employment offer and a contract offer to some group. But if it's this group's directive that you want the consultant to go out and work with certain members of the community to gather their feedback and their input on what we need in our next city administrator, I have absolutely no doubt that the consultant will do that for you.
And this consultant can do everything in their power to convince all of us that this is not going to be a political appointment.
That's certainly the goal, is to make it an.
I didn't see that in there, so tell them to put it in their documentation.
Any other questions about the item?
I just would like to see a few other proposals from some other companies.
Was there other proposals?
I did not. There are 2 other firms that I'm aware of that do the search, and due to the nature of the recent work by Springstead as opposed to the nature of the recent work by the other 2 firms, I did not obtain proposals from them. If you'd like to, table this for 2 weeks, I can certainly do that. I'm sure those firms would be happy to work with us. It was my opinion that the timeliness of it was of the utmost importance, and I thought that given their working relationship with the city, which I understand Councilmember Luce is raising as potentially a negative, I saw it as a positive. I brought forward just one, but I'd be happy to obtain the other 2 if that's the wish of the council.
If Springstead's can convince me that they're not political, and, I trust Dave Onmock. I don't know the other lady, but if they can tell me that, then I don't have a problem with it. They can seek some citizen input or citizen review board or something like that, not a group of, the chamber or the Rotary or Lions or something like that, but a citizen group made up of just ad hoc citizens.
Was that a motion?
No, not really.
Just so everybody knows too, it's not just my feeling about Springstead. There's community members that have spoken to me about this.
Yep,
So,
me too.
All right. Do we have a motion from anyone?
There is a requested action. You don't have to take it, but there is a requested action.
Yeah.
in the packet.
Well, for the sake of timeliness, I'll recommend that the city accept the proposal from Waters and Company.
And I also, for the sake of timeliness, will accept that.
All right, a motion by Councilor Whiting, second by Councilor Mokel.
How do we get
Councilor Lehman.
reassurances from this company that it's not political, that they won't allow the process to become political?
When they interview you.
That's one.
Can you tell me what that means to you? What
It means
becomes
that you
political?
three, having your 3 votes lined up, want to appoint a city administrator to jump at your beck and call.
That's your opinion.
That is my opinion. And it's not only my opinion, it's many people's opinion.
Councilmember Lehman, I can tell you from my knowledge of the city manager and administrator community, no candidate relishes taking a job on a 3-2 vote. It will certainly be our goal to try to find a candidate that can get more support than that amongst the city council, because you may have a hard time negotiating a contract with the desired candidate if they see it as a 3-2 vote. How all of us conduct ourselves in the coming months and what we say, what we do, where we spend our time and our efforts is all on camera. It's all being watched. It's all being reported by the media, and it's all available to our potential pool of applicants. It's a fairly small community of people that work in this profession, and we don't see a great deal of influx of out-of-state candidates. So at the end of the day, a 3-2 majority can take a vote and offer a contract, and I don't know that there's any legal way around that. I can assure you that this is what these consultants, Ms. Klump and Mr. Unmock, do on a regular basis, is work with city councils. And there's kind of 2 ways you find yourself in need of a new city administrator. Either you asked your previous one to leave, or they moved on their own accord. The situation we find ourselves in, while it feels unique to us after so many years of having the same city administrator, it's not extremely unique in the municipal government community. This happens, and communities reach this point where they part ways with their administrator. So Ms. Klump and Mr. Unmock have worked with many councils that are not unanimous, and part of their skill that we're paying for is to help us navigate, help us come to consensus. And it would certainly be the goal to find someone that gets offered a contract on more than a 3-2 vote, because not too many well-qualified city administrators are going to jump at the chance, especially if they currently have a job, to leave that job to come, work on a 3-2 vote. It's just less than desirable.
I'm just saying that it doesn't benefit anybody in our community, not this council, not staff, not the residents, if we hire somebody and turn around and the next council removes that person and gets another new person in. This is not.
All 100% agree on that.
So the process needs to be.
You want to add an amendment that we can?
I want this company to know, if I'm going to vote for this, that our expectation that it is not political.
I'd accept that as an amendment.
And I would too.
All right.
I'm just questioning whether or not we could make a motion that it takes a supermajority to,
Appoint an administrator.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, no. Not unless you do an ordinance amendment, or something to that effect. But actions of the council are majority of the city council, except as otherwise set forth in state law. So you'd have to.
My intent and very much hope is that we'll be able to find someone that will be a 5-0 vote, that we will all love and that we will all work really well together with, and that it is a 5-0 vote. I will have to be a special person, no doubt. But this job, in my opinion, as city administrator of our great city, is extremely desirable to a lot of folks. And I think that we will, in my opinion, we'll have a great pool of candidates and a great pool of folks that we can all talk to and we can all be comfortable with and go through this process with Springstead's help to get there, to get us to a 5-0 vote. I'm not saying that it absolutely has to be a 5-0 vote, but I'm saying that that is the goal, and that is where we should be, because I think that is the right move.
If I can just add, again, Dave Ungmacht is familiar with the dynamics here in Scott County and city of Shakopee. That's why I think it's a good fit for this particular consulting group.
All right, so we have an amended motion on the floor. Any further discussion on that motion?
We voting on the amendment or the motion?
We don't need the amendment was accepted. So the motion is,
What'd you say, Mike?
he asked what the motion is, and it's to accept the attached proposal from Waters and Company with the amendment that it be an apolitical
Process.
process.
Yep.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1 with Councilor Luce in dissent. All right, item 8F3, review of 2015 fee schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This item is brought back to you at council's request from the December 16th meeting. During that meeting, the adoption of the city's 2015 fee schedule was brought forward for council action. And at the end of the conversation and the discussion, the 2015 fee schedule was adopted by the council and is currently in place. However, we were asked to come back with a little bit more information on a section in particular. And council members, I hope I'm reflecting accurately what I believe I heard at that meeting, which was there was a concern particularly about the permit fees being charged for residential properties. The argument was put forward that the city should want to encourage investment and quality maintenance in our residential housing stock, and that we don't want our permit fees to be a disincentive to making those repairs and enhancements to your home. Quite a bit of the conversation centered around the requirement of a building permit for door replacement. It also goes along with window replacement and so forth. To that end, Mr. Leek, Ms. Linehan, and I, as well as our acting building official, sat down and made sure we were all on the same page as far as where our fee schedule is and when it is enacted. We do not require a building permit for the replacement of a single door or a screen door or a storm door. It is when you are changing the framing and the structure of the door, the size of the opening, or anything that causes it to be reframed, then that does require a building permit. The purpose of that is that framing of that door is structural to the building. So I provided you with some examples of the areas where we do require building permits for additions and remodels and what might be considered maintenance type work. Re-siding is another example, as well as a list of areas where we do not require a permit, and in fact state law outright prohibits the requirement of a permit. Those things include putting in new cabinetry, new appliances, new bathroom fixtures in the same location, that don't have plumbing changes to them, new flooring, paint. None of those things require a permit from the city of Shakopee. So hopefully you found the information that was provided in the staff memo useful. At this point, I guess I'm interested to know if there's further questions or desired changes.
Councilor Lehman.
Do you need a permit to replace windows if you're not changing the opening size or any of the wood framing?
I think that's what she just said no for.
Yeah.
I don't believe so. So for example, the neighborhood kid throws a baseball through your window and now you need to replace the window because the glass got broken. That's not gonna require a permit. It's gonna go in the same opening and the same frame that was currently there.
When they take out the wood windows and put in vinyl windows, they take out the window, but the frame is still there, and they custom make the windows that fit right into the frame. Does that require a permit?
I believe the answer to that is yes, and that's because there is a question of whether or not the window is actually fitted to that frame. I have some personal experience with that. There are times when you think that's what you're going to do, and in fact, you end up replacing the framing because the window doesn't fit the existing framing. And the underlying concern is that windows, in many cases, are a concern for egress from the property, and of course affect the integrity of the structure if they're not properly fitted. So, as I think was indicated, someone breaks your window, you replace the pane of glass, or if you can't replace the pane of glass, you replace a panel. That's not going to require a permit. On the other hand, if you're changing out to a new kind of window and it may require retrofitting of the structure, I believe that will require a permit. And generally when that happens, it is going to be more than one window replacement. There are several windows that typically are replaced So it's a rather expensive proposition.
All right,
And
how
again-
about a window in a basement brick wall? You're taking out an existing wooden window and you're gonna put in a new window. It's block all the way around it and you ain't touching the block.
I don't believe in that case that a permit is required.
May I ask, Michael, the information you're given is based on the building, it's a building code requirement, not a local city requirement, right?
Correct. None of this relates to local city ordinances. It is a building code requirement. And frankly, that's why when I came in last week, I talked specifically with our acting building official to ask those questions about at what level the building code requires permits to be provided. And that gets reflected in our fee schedule.
I'm trying to figure out how somebody's personal property is now becoming somebody else's property concern. That's kind of where I'm getting at this.
Counselor Lehman, if I can attempt to answer that, and it may not be satisfactory for you, the building code exists because of concerns about general health, safety, and welfare. So we want to make sure that buildings are structurally sound, that they are intact for purposes of keeping cool in the summer, warm in the winter, the mechanical systems work. Replacement of windows with other types of windows and frame doors, including the frames, are really intrinsic to that.
Well,
It is the concern of the city to protect its residents.
Instead of
in
take
those
it all
structures.
night, how about we just say you're trying to protect us from ourselves,
Good answer.
okay?
Mr. Luce.
I think what the main goal is most people don't live in the same house all their life. So if you do changes on the house, they want it so that it's up to a standard that the next person is safe.
They're worried about our health, but they don't mind taking all your money out of your pocket so you can't heat your house. Whatever. Typical overreach of government.
Well, I agree, nobody wants to pay a permit fee. And nobody wants to have to
I'm
go
all
through
for
that
a
step.
permit when it's, a gas line or electrical line or structural. Don't have a problem with it. But I don't need a permit to cut a hole in my floor. I don't need a permit to turn my water on and let 10,000 gallons flood my house. It's my house. I can do that. But they're worried about me harming myself. Seriously?
Well,
Not you personally, Mr. Lake, just in general. So I don't want to.
we looked at the permit fees at one point
I've
in
said
time
my
and
piece.
decided
Let's just
that they
pass this and
were
move on.
not high enough, so we moved them up. We did a study. We're moving on. I'll make a.
Do we need to make a motion?
I don't think there's
Yeah, that was
anything.
moved, yeah.
Yeah,
We already passed
The
it.
fee schedule was passed. Unless you want to make a change, no motion is needed.
I'm sorry, I had to go take a phone call. Neighbor's carbon monoxide alarm is going off and they need to get in our house, so. But I missed it. What's your concern, Councilor Lehman?
Watch tape. We'll move on.
Okay. Because if I recall, I shared your same concern at the last
Well,
meeting.
it's government trying to protect you from yourself. It's just a waste of taxpayers' money. They're worried about our health and well-being, but they don't mind taking most of your money out of your paycheck in the form of taxation. They're really worried about your health and well-being. They'd let you keep some of your money so you can actually live a life.
The fee pays
All
for
right.
the inspectors.
We paid for it at the beginning of the year in the budget. They could sit there with nothing to do all day and they're getting their paycheck. It's been decided when we passed the budget.
It's actually not true whatsoever, but fees pay for that. So, all right. So if I missed that one, I'm so sorry, I guess. So we're gonna move on to 9A, which 9A and 9B are closed session, which we get to move a third time for the night. So,
Mr. Mayor, if you would
Yes.
please reference the statute listed in the action sought for 9A that is required to go on the record.
Councilor Lehman is a pro at this one.
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute recess to go into closed session to discuss, looking for the action here. Permitted under Minnesota State Statute 13D05 Subdivision 3 to consider purchasing property located northwest corner of the intersection of Highway 169 and 69.
And do we need to do the other one as
Read
well?
the other address into the record, please.
The other one is the 254 First Avenue West, 234 First Avenue West, Shakopee.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilor Lehman and a second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are going into closed session.